Now we've seen a lot of really good stuff on creating these builds, these branch policies, etc. We have a pull request that's outstanding. So where do we go from now? Take a look at my screen and you'll see me approving that pull request. So if I'm looking down at my Parts Unlimited work, and I've got my own work here, and I see my pull requests in Parts Unlimited, and here's the latest pull request created 10 minutes ago, I'm going to click on that pull request and it'll bring me over to this pull request basically. And this is where I'm going to be doing my own looking at the code, doing my code review, etc. So I'm going to step in here, and there's a couple things I'm noticing. It's from this MVA demo into master. Here's the overview. Looks like everything's passed. A build has succeeded for this, so I don't have to worry about that. The work item is change discount to 15%. The reviewer is anybody on the team. It was created by Colin. I get a really good feeling for this, and I can add a discussion. I might say, team, or I might say this specifically. I can do like at Colin, and do this to Colin. I've got this. So I'm gonna be doing the review for it, and I can send that comment out if I so choose. So that goes right out to Colin. And I'm going to start my review, noticing that nobody's reviewed it so far. So a couple things I might want to do is look at the files involved in this. And this is where I can see side-by-side diff. I can change my differential view to an inline diff. I kind of like the side-by-side, especially when I'm looking at my bigger monitor. But you see here 25%, and we're moving over to 56. Oh, Colin, 16%. That sounds like a bug to me. That's an error in the code somewhere. Not something I'm going to file a big bug against, but I do need to comment on this. I'm going to click on a comment and say, hey, Colin. And this gives Colin notifies him. Colin, yeah, you need to get this fixed. And I might decide to make that comment, but I might be thinking as a business user, on second thought, 16 is an even better number because it's even. All right, I'm going to comment on that code. That comment is now stored in the code, and anybody else can read it. Meanwhile, I've tagged you, maybe tagged the business user. That'll alert them to let them know they need to come in and take a look at this as well. So we can comment on individual lines. We can comment on the overall pull request. I can see what kind of commits went into the pull request, the history, all of that other goodness. And I might even be willing to pop back to the files and see if there's anything there. If there's let me hit the overview back as files, and notice Colin sneakily has gone in and I like the way you think, right? So thank you very much. I'm okay with this. And as far as we go for this demo, we're not going to go change this back to 15%. We just wanted to show you this teamwork, this back and forth, this lifestyle, frankly, of just communication, collaboration, openness, friendliness.
What I love about this feature, Steve, is that a lot of teams say they do code review, and maybe they code over the shoulder, do some paired programming, but there's nothing really in the system that's tracked. Has a code review actually happened or not? Yeah. And this pull request just brings us into the flow in a very natural way. It's the only way you can get your changes from your branch into master. So it kind of forces the team to be a little bit more formal without really blocking anything. Yes. It just feels really natural. It flows really nicely. If I went and updated that discount to 15%, it would update the pull request. There's no need to create a new one. It just works and flows really nicely.
And I love that. We use this commonly. We want development teams to fall into the pit of success, right? You want to come back and make it so that they're following the easy flow, following the flow you've set out, helps them be successful. And this is just one of those little features that you can drop in that's such a delighter and helps people, frankly, fall into the pit of success. All right, back to my screen, and we're going to approve this pull request and get it over to Colin. So I can approve with suggestions. I can wait for the author to respond and fix something, reject it. I'm going to approve this. You'll notice that it is now approved. Popping over to update, looks like all of these things are ready. And I'm going to complete the pull request. Do you mind if I complete that?
You're welcome to.
Thank you very much, Colin. I'm going to complete the pull request, and it'll say it's merged the pull request in, and I'm going to delete that branch. We no longer need it. I can squash changes, etc. I'm not going to do that. And you'll see that the merge is now in process, and it's now completed. Colin, let's switch over to your screen and see what's happening right now.
Thank you, Steve. So here I am on the Build tab, and I'm going to open up the Parts Unlimited build. Now you'll see that build 10064 completed, which was the build that queued off when I created the pull request initially. Steve just approved the pull request, which is again going to queue another build. So that's why build 10065 is in progress. Let's edit this build definition and just take a quick dive into what exactly is involved in setting up this build definition. So we're versioning our assemblies. We're taking the build number and we're injecting that into the CS files. And this extension and this task actually comes from an extension pack. And I'm going to plug my extension since it is free.
Yes.
If you go to the shopping basket in the toolbar, you can click Browse Marketplace, and that'll take you to the marketplace where you can go and browse for extensions that extend either the UI of VSTS or the build mechanism. And so I have a pack of build tasks that you can drop into your builds that do things which I think are pretty useful to have in builds.
And I think that it's very important that you go out and show that, because Marketplace has not just Colin's task, it's got tasks from all over the place. Microsoft Teams will build tasks that plug in and extend things. Other competitive products will build tasks to help you integrate VSTS with their products. It's got an amazing ecosystem surrounding it, which gives you a lot of additional functionality. So go explore that.
Right.
We found that that particular one is in almost every single one of our builds because it's critical for our deployment out to Azure.
Yep. So if you remember back to the release I showed you, we were able to see which version of the build was in which environment. And that's coming from this version number. So this is something which we find links through from builds to releases and helps you track what code is where in your pipeline. Then we're doing a NuGet restore. We're building the solution. We're then calling unit tests. And you can imagine if we wanted to do anything else, we could just hit this add build step. This would open up the task catalog. So I just wanted to quickly show the task catalog. I'll go over to the All tab just to show you there are dozens of tasks that you can use in your builds and releases.
And what's interesting is those dozens and dozens of tasks are the ones that are mostly out of the box. And then there are hundreds of other ones that you can pull in to get additional functionality.
Right. And you can, of course, build your own tasks to add into the task library if you need to. So one thing I wanted to show quickly when the unit testing is that by checking the code coverage enabled checkbox, I have just enabled code coverage on my testing. So not only am I running tests against my code, but the build is also going to calculate how much of my code is being hit while the tests are running. A great quality measure that teams need to get into the habit of doing.
Absolutely.
We can then publish symbols, and finally, we're publishing the output. In this case, it's a web deploy package, which is a way of packaging up websites so that we're ready to deploy to our hosting platform of choice, which is Azure. And we're also publishing an ARM template.
Love it.
So you'll see how we use this ARM template in the releases to actually spin up or update our environment that we're hosting on. And we'll see that when we get to the releases.
Again, coming back to that infrastructure as code that is so powerful when you're making that mind shift from going from on-premises development to this new cloud-enabled development practice. Love it.
So let's go to the summary of the build. And we can see that 10065 is completed while I've been showing you the definition. So if we click on that, we'll see the build summary. So you can see on the left-hand side that all the tasks executed successfully, which is great. I'm going to minimize that since we know the build completed. But what I am going to show you here is that we can see exactly which source was used for this build. We can see what the commit was that was used for this build. We can see some issues. So there might be build warnings here. If there were errors for build failures, we'd see them here. You can see we see associated work items. What work was in this build is a question that developers have a tough time answering if they don't have a build system. And sometimes even if they do have build systems, there's no integration into their work item tracking tools. So this is fantastic that I didn't have to do anything special, but because the branch I was committing my code into was linked to this work item, it pulls through and links that work item to the build. So we can look at the build and know this is the build that's got the change to 15%. We can see all the associated changes. There's the initial commit as well as the pull request. The pull request is actually another commit in a Git repository. Coming up to the top right-hand side here, we can see our test results right in the build summary report. So we have 14 unit tests, and they're all passing. Phew! Glad I didn't break anything. We can also see the run duration. How long did it actually take to run those tests? Now, in a suite of 14 tests, that may not be so critical, but if you've got hundreds or thousands of tests, which a lot of teams do, tracking how long your tests take to run is an important metric.
And then you might choose to do something like segregate those into fast-running ones that run on a continuous integration cycle and long-running ones that run on maybe a nightly schedule or some other cadence, maybe prior to pulling to master, for instance.
We'll see the code coverage results. A nice graph there showing that we have 26% code coverage. Now we can download this code coverage results file. And if we open this up in Visual Studio, it will give us a drill down capability where we can drill down into those results. It'll even do code color highlighting so we can see exactly which lines have been covered by our tests and which haven't. For our purposes, it's good enough that we can see what is the overall code coverage that we have, and we'll see how this is going to affect the release when we get to the release later on. Now, finally, in the deployment section, you'll see that we have 3 environments. This might look familiar.
Very much so.
We've shown you dev, staging, and production. I can actually see that the deployment of this build, 10065, is currently in progress in the dev environment.
What? Are you telling me you're doing an automated release as well?
Absolutely. So we'll see that on the release side, how the release is configured to monitor this build, and as soon as a successful build is available, suck it into the dev environment and get it deployed so that our code that we've just changed, just took through code review, is automatically deployed to our dev environment.
This is absolutely amazing stuff. I love watching that whole dev process running through the build, the compilation, the unit testing. Again, this is the way you should be working as a developer. This is your teamwork and getting together on this quick cadence of delivery through with these very fast feedback loops, unit tests, code reviews, pull requests. All of these things join together to make you so much more productive as a developer. Next up, we're going to be seeing some release capabilities that you alluded to a little bit already.